Yes, as Anna just said, we went into the recession in very poor fiscal shape. We probably made a lot of bad decisions. We should have been in better fiscal condition going into the recession, but we weren't. So we had no reserves, nothing to kind of temporarily cushion the impact on revenues from the falling economy. And then even if, in addition to that, we had this underlying problem already that we knew would have popped back up in 9-10. The recession merely added dramatically to that problem. This chart really speaks to the speaker's earlier question that he made towards me, or comments towards me. What was really the effect on our revenue base? And this just shows for the 2010-11 year, the estimates we had made back in January of 2008 with our most recent estimates. And you can see that for all our big three taxes, which is almost 95% of our general fund income, we lost more than a quarter of the base. That is a very dramatic fall off in a very short period of time. It's due to, as Anna referred to earlier, our volatility in our revenue structure, and it just points to the kind of dramatic problem that we've been dealing with ever since.
Senator Steinbrueck, do you have a question?
Thank you, Governor. We've all struggled, mightily over the last several years to maintain as high a level of investment in education, healthcare, and other vital services, and we have made significant cuts. But I think it would be helpful to illustrate, if we could, the finance director or the legislative analyst, which cuts we've made were permanent cuts, and which cuts were one-time supplanted, if you will, by federal funds or other things. And then the second part of the question, which I think is relevant, of the amount of public investment that we've been able to maintain, how much of that investment is mandated by voter-approved initiative and by federal law?
Captures basically the solutions that have been enacted in the last series of budget cycles, and look at the total amount of solutions and the amount of those solutions that were short-term in nature versus permanent reductions. So you can see in the 2008-9, there were a total of $24.3 billion in solutions that were enacted. 75% of those were shorter term. Some of those solutions also did not materialize. Some of the solutions that did not materialize, it was a function of court decisions. And in other cases, they're just solutions that did not occur. In 2009-10, out of the $60 billion in solutions, roughly 84% of those were one-time or short-term in nature or did not materialize. And in 10-11, these estimates, $19.3 billion in solutions, and 85% of those solutions were short-term or did not materialize. As to your other question, the state definitely faces a series of constraints in terms of balancing its budget. For example, federal healthcare reform, and previously the economic stimulus funds prevented the state from looking at reductions in the eligibility, largely in most of the eligibility in the Medicaid program as a condition of receiving federal funds, and now under healthcare reform, they're spending in other areas that is also constrained by voter initiatives or court decisions. And there's also lots of flexibility in some of the other areas of the budget, even though there are constitutional requirements that outline what the projected level of spending is supposed to be. That's an area like Proposition 98. The Constitution calls for a particular level of funding, but the legislature retains the ability to determine what level of appropriation to provide.
So explain the next slide, where a lot of the things that were done don't get us quite where we need to be.
Sure. This slide provides a summary of some of the solutions that have been enacted in the last decade, and they include three categories of solutions. Temporary solutions, so solutions that provide a substantial assistance in balancing the budget, but they're temporary in nature. Solutions that can't be repeated, so they were of one-time assistance, but they can't occur again. And then some solutions that made the future deficit worse while they assisted with balancing that first budgetary deficit. In the temporary solution category, you can see that one of the largest solutions in 8, 9, 10, and 10, 11 was the federal stimulus fund that provided a cumulative $17 billion. The expiring tax measures, their 9, 10 value is 8.3. The value over the 3-year period is closer to 19 billion. Solutions that can't be repeated, this includes acceleration of revenues, so collecting next year's revenues, a portion of next year's revenues this year from income taxes and corporate taxes, shifts in property taxes from redevelopment agencies to pay for costs in schools and other areas. Changes to the way in which we account for costs in the Medicaid program. The shift of payroll for state employee payroll from June 30th to July 1st. These are the types of solutions that provide one-time benefit but can't be repeated. The next category are the solutions that have made the problem worse, and these are the categories of solution that you referenced earlier that will cost us $2.8 billion in 11-12. They include the issuance of economic recovery bonds, the sale of tobacco settlement revenues, loans from special funds, borrowing from local government, the sale of state buildings that is underway, and deferral of payment to local government for various mandates and mandated programs.
So if you look at that, you see that $66 billion of so-called solutions worked for a while, a year or two, but those aren't available anymore. And that's why where we are is unique. Not only are things worse because of the economy, because of disappearance of federal revenue, but we don't have the tools and the opportunity to put some first-time, one-time money and plug the hole. Not much of that is left. And that's why what we're looking at today is much worse than it's ever been before, and our opportunities to fix it are very limited. So let's look at the larger context. How does California fit in and compare with some of the other states?
So this slide compares California and how California's level of taxes and fees, and this includes both local and state, compares to other states. And you can see that California ranks 15th in the nation. There's some outliers like Alaska, and part of the reason why they're outliers is because their level of taxation of oil, and the amount of oil they've got. And you can see where we compare there at 22 out of $100 in personal income. The next slide captures how California compares in terms of the total number of state employees per residence. And California is the 4th lowest in the country in terms of the number of state employees. It's 107 employees per 10,000 residents in 2009. When we look at state and local employees in the aggregate, California ranks 6th lowest. This next slide captures where we are in our schools. And California, in terms of its number of students per teacher, students per counselor, students per librarian, school administrator, has some of the lowest ranks in the nation, some of the highest ratios. We've got, as you can see at the top, we rank 49th in students per teacher and roughly 21 students per teacher. 49th as students per counselor, at the bottom for students per librarians, and 47th for students per school administrators.